now going to look at one of the physical contributors to well-being, sleep. Bettina.
So the evidence is indisputable that sleep is crucially important for brain development and brain functioning. So first of all, we know that sleep is where memories are consolidated. So they've done these studies where they have two groups who are given a memory task. One group are allowed to sleep, the other group are not allowed to sleep, and they find that the group who have slept recall far more. So there's something that goes on in the brain when we sleep that allows us to learn.
So it goes against that all-nighter.
Absolutely, yes, for sure.
Good to know.
We also know that sleep affects the cognitive functioning that supports learning. So things like attention, our working memory, our processing speed. So again, they've done these studies where some kids are allowed to only sleep for 5 hours over a period of a few nights. The others are allowed 9 hours of sleep, and then they measure these cognitive functions.
That's so important in lessons and in anything.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's the first thing. The second thing that might be more surprising for parents is that a lack of sleep also impacts on emotional processing. So it's not only how we are able to manage our own emotions, but how we perceive emotions in other people. So we all may recognise we can be a bit more emotionally volatile when we haven't had much sleep, but there's a lot of science to back that up. I think the third important thing that really we know from science is that children will struggle to manage sleep on their own. They really need the support of parents to do that.
So many more interesting things to do than sleep.
Yeah, I mean, particularly in the world of technology. Yeah, it can be a real distractor, and it's something that parents really need to think about and kind of get hold of.
So it's beyond there, so it's not a reasonable expectation of children. Okay, then, so knowing those three things, how can you kind of translate that into the home for parents?
Yeah. So the first thing is establish rules very early on. I mean, essentially, ideally in the primary years, as we've talked about, but have consistency in implementing them. It's going to make those teenage years much easier. I mean, there are some really good science now, top tips in terms of what we need in the environment. So there's good evidence that we need light in the morning, we need darkness at night. It may seem obvious, but these things are really important. Temperature needs to be cool.
Yeah.
Also, it's important to have a wind down routine, and I know Matthew Walker, who you've interviewed, talks about sleep being like landing a plane. I think that's a great analogy. There has to be a routine. And then the other thing is just remembering some of the bad habits. So there's good evidence that we shouldn't be sitting in our bed for a long time before going to sleep. Then we associate bed and being awake. And also that obviously, it seems obvious to us anyway, that technologies like phones and that kind of thing really need to be separate from where we're sleeping. And Beth, just one more thing. We need to think a little bit about teenagers here, because in today's world, all teenagers have phones and they want their phones with them at night time, but they are not good bedfellows, excuse the pun. We do need, as a parent, to have that battle to get the phone off them at night, but think carefully about how you do it. Have some empathy. Actually, the phone is a child's social life. So if they don't have their phone and all their friends have their phone at night, there is this, what they call FOMO, fear of missing out, which is very, very real for them.
Lots of our parents say they struggle with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think thinking about kind, firm, but clear boundaries and getting the phone out of the room at night is very important.
And actually, children cannot themselves regulate their devices when they're right next to them at night.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for those tips. I think they're really helpful to sort of think of in a home context. So just a couple of questions for you to reflect on. How much of the science and some of the tips that Bettina mentioned did you already know and are part of your family bedtime routine? And are there any that are the most challenging for you? I know often parents of teenagers talk about the devices, but identify which ones are perhaps more challenging for you. And secondly, as a family, could you monitor everyone's sleep for a week? Actually, really, how much sleep and quality of sleep do you get? And look at the impact on that cognitive and emotional processing. So just starting the cause and effect conversation. I slept really well. I could concentrate in school, those sorts of things.
And then if we go, we've had the 3, the science, we've had the 2, the questions, and the 1 is really thinking, is there something that really makes sense for you in terms of your life that you might commit to changing?
Yeah.